really the goal of today's session is for individuals who either have a program, a course, a session, or new product that they want to launch, that you have the tools to be able to kind of put the pieces together. Because launching sometimes we make it harder than it needs to be. And there's some things that at times, if we keep this in mind, right, the formula is pretty simple. And the biggest thing that I typically will say to anyone is we need to always test, rinse, and repeat and forget about the perfection on anything. And I guess for people who don't know me and may be, this isn't their first time joining us, Julie DeLucca-Collins, business strategist, but most of all, someone that really loves to create processes and strategies that, by the way, I'm not perfect at. And certainly our goal is to continue to solidify the processes, get them better, and then get to the rinse and repeat. And I will talk a little bit about that. I'm also a podcaster. I have written a book, and I am a great collaborator and friend and colleague of Nancy and Amy, the Passionistas. And if you are here, you too are a great friend, collaborator of Nancy and Amy, the Passionistas. So before we get started, I want to get a sense of why the topic today kind of grabbed your attention. So I don't know, Chelsea, I got to put you on the spot. What did you get from why this topic? Why did you want to participate? Tell me a little bit more about that.
Well, for those of you who don't know me, my name is Chelsea. I'm the owner of Crystal Clear Copy, and I've worked with Julie for a while now, a couple
5 years.
years. Oh my gosh, that's so crazy. And when she popped up on the Passionistas, I was like, I haven't actually ever attended any of your live workshops.
That's
So
true.
I really wanted to see you in action.
Ooh,
I get to be your brand voice behind the scenes, but I really get to hear you speak live. So I was really excited about that.
so fun.
And yeah, and at the same time, I was like, we always kind of have projects in the back of our mind.
Hmm.
And, I've done my fair share of little side hustles. Some of them have launched and some of them kind of got stuck.
Hmm.
I've got one that's like permanently stuck and has been stuck for a year. So I'm thinking maybe this will be the jump start I need.
Ooh, well, I'm excited to hear about that because I've definitely have seen you launch and grow and do a lot of different things, and that's one of the things that I get really excited about. I think that sometimes we have big dreams, but somehow the path doesn't kind of materialize. And I'll talk a little bit about the materialization of the path and how that works out. So glad you're here, Amy. I don't know if you can unmute or unmic or if you're able to, but if not. It's okay. Is there I see there is oh, there you are. Hey, Amy.
I can. I was trying to figure out how to share my phone screen to my computer and I can't. So phone it is.
You're
Um
fine, you're fine.
I I wanted to support you for one, and I love
Oh,
being in the Passionistas groups, everything that they're doing. But I also have this dream plan. I mean, it's going to be happening pretty quick, but like I really want to buy a farm and I want to grow
mhm.
food to feed people. And so the
Oh my
idea
god.
of getting the word out and sharing that with people is it just feels really important to me and I could use all the help I can get.
Okay. Well, I love it, and thank you, ladies, for being here and for supporting me. I have to say that, again, one of the things that I learned from my corporate days and the thing that I bring into the work that I do now is two different perspectives, and I'm gonna tell you a quick story. When I worked for, I guess I could name I will name him HLC. That was the one company, and we always refer to it as HLC. So when I worked for HLC, the founders, Mr. and Mrs., run this multi-million dollar, 150 million dollars per year is what the revenue of the company is. It's a national company, and I started just as a lowly person in one of the company stores or centers. It's a tutoring company, and most people know that. And As I got promoted into the corporate arena, and I started to work for the business development VP, and I learned a lot with him. And under his mentorship, I was able to grow to the other role and into the executive role that I held until I left the company. The one thing with HLC is that in order to launch something, first of all, the person that came up with the idea had to be someone that had been with the company for at least a year. You couldn't throw out an idea for the company to launch unless you'd been there for a year. Second of all, once the idea came to the table, it was usually discussed in one of the many committees that we had. Once we discussed that in the committee, then the appropriate committee that would deal with that idea, whether it be marketing or the educational research or whether it be maybe IT, right? There was always a committee for that. And then they would test out and roll out the idea, and it would go into testing for about, I don't know, 6, 8, 9 months. So by the time the idea actually came to fruition, it was probably a couple of years since the idea was just a dream. And the process was great because in some ways it allowed us to kind of figure out what we needed. Did we have the right people, the right resources? How was that going to be? And really plan out, the launch of whatever that may be. And of course, it gave us this, we kind of checked off to make sure we weren't going to make it a mess, that it wasn't going to flop. Of course, we would learn from the launch itself, but then we would come back and revise. And one of the things that used to drive me crazy is that a lot of the ideas and a lot of the things that came up were things that were going to really be able to create an impact in the business, create an impact on the people that we serve, and most of all, of course, as a business, really bring us to the next level, whether it be in authority or revenue. And it really was frustrating for me, especially someone that I like to dream big and I'd like to kind of fly by the seat of my pants most of the time. However, working with the Mr. and Mrs., as I'm going to call them, holds a PhD in statistics. And the reason I'm telling you this is because it's relevant to a lot of the stuff that I know now. He required all of us to create most 99% of every plan or anything that we were doing on an Excel spreadsheet. And it had to be nothing colored. Every cell had to have like rows and columns, but one data point per cell. And the joke, even to this day, with some of my friends, we still have a text thread between us after all these years, right? We've known each other since 1999. Um, and the joke is rows and columns, rows and columns. When things are going wrong, you need to go back to the rows and columns. And it was so annoying, right? But I took that and I took that experience and I put it in my back pocket. Fast forward, I went to work for another company and I'm going to call them the BA because those again are the initials and that's how we refer to the company, the BA. Now, the founder of the BA was an educator like Mr. and Mrs. were, but the one difference about her is that she flew by the seat of her pants and she brought me on board to help kind of bring her down and kind of tame her, which I thought was kind of funny that she had done that. But the reality is that because I had the experience with the other company, I had become a rose and column kind of person. And the one thing that I loved about what we did in the bar is that if our founder had an idea, right, you could be sure that we were implementing it and rolling it out the next day, which was great, right? Because we didn't have to wait. We didn't have to like test out and figure out, do we have the right people? Do we even have the money or how we're going to do that? We just did it. Many times we would sit in the office of maybe a potential client, and they would say, well, I like that you do this and this, but this is really what I need. I need this, this, and that. And she would typically say, okay, yeah, we do that. Absolutely. And then as we're walking to the car, she would most likely say, okay, how are we going to do that? And I kept thinking, are you kidding me? And then it was my job to figure out how we were going to do it. And for the most part, it was great to be able to have the bandwidth and also the leeway to be able to just kind of figure it out. But one of the things that I found also is that in that, there was a lot of discombobulation when you just roll out and when you don't have some of the rows and columns that you need in life. So, fast forward to now where I am. One of the things that I have found is that I can, for the most part, really be able to kind of mix the two experiences into what I do today. And the reason that I feel that, again, not perfect, certainly make mistakes, but at times I can still think big picture and I know that I can figure it out when I roll things out. But at the same time, I know the importance of having those boundaries and those lines that you need to stay within, because those are the ones that are going to allow you to scale easily and they're going to allow you to be more profitable when it comes to a lot of different things. So I know that this may not make a lot of sense as we begin, but I do want to come back to this quick example because you'll see how it rolls into this whole conversation. So today we're talking about launching, and this is a boot camp, right? So it's going to be quick, it's going to be a lot of information, and the goal of the today is not that you are perfect at launching, but that you understand the main components that you should be looking at when it comes to launching, whatever it might be. So I'm going to share my screen. So here we are. So the first thing when it comes to launching, and then today's goal is really that you go from an idea to actually launching with that clarity, the knowledge that, okay, I have an idea, I know that I can do this, and ultimately I'm going to do it. And as I go, I will figure out the strategy and I will become confident, right? Confidence is not something that you're going to necessarily have up front when it comes to launching something. Confidence is actually something that we get from the experience and from the validation that we've been doing the thing and getting better at it and gaining the competency. That competency is what leads us to the confidence. Now, again, I want to have you be able to create a list of all the great, amazing, fabulous things that you want to put out into the world. And maybe you already have that, or maybe you have one. But I also want to help you create something that has purpose, that is well designed, and it's going to allow you to then create that compelling offer, that compelling thing that people need and people want, and you're going to be able to invite them to that party. So, here is a little bit of the reasons why most launches fizzle. Okay. And I've seen a lot of this being in the personal development world, working with individuals. We see a lot of different things. And the first and foremost thing that I notice is that skip a very important piece of this, and that is the pre launch. The pre launch work is incredibly important. Think about when you're starting maybe a diet. I don't like the word diet, but I'll say that, right? You're launching maybe a brand new diet, you want to get in shape, and that's your launch. Well, you have to do the pre work because if you decide you're going to get healthy, that you want to be fit, that you want to go ahead and get strong, all of those things, right? And maybe even lose a few inches and pounds that you can fit into the outfit of your dreams. If you don't go shopping, if you don't prepare your refrigerator, if you don't dump out your junk food, if you don't understand what is the best path that you're going to follow when it comes to this health journey, you're going to most likely get started because the motivation gets you started, but the consistency will lack. Why? Because these are not the habits that you've created. So, again, creating that pre launch schedule like, what are we going to need? What is this going to look like? And I'm going to talk a little bit about that, right? As we move forward. The other thing that I see is that a lot of times we are rushing to solve a problem. We're rushing. We wanna like, "Oh, you know what? Someone told me that they need us to, offer XYZ. I'm gonna do that. Why not? Why the heck not?" I see this a lot with my clients. I actually, have a couple clients that I have worked with, and they've been with me for a while. And one of the things that I found with them as we started to work together is the reason that they were really struggling is because in the very beginning, right? They had this great idea and then they like, "Okay, I'm gonna sell that." But then there was no pre-planning. There was no understanding of what I was gonna be like. And 9 times out of 10, they were dumping something else that they were working on because they had not gotten traction yet. And they said, "Well, that's not working. I might as well jump into this." And as we know, if you start with, for instance, marathon training, and then you decide you're going to be a yoga teacher, the training is completely different. And whatever progress you had made with one, it's not going to necessarily apply to the other. And that's really a lot of what happens when we're rushing into an offer. Now, the other piece of it that really is hard, and it becomes that other sticking point in problem number three, is that we begin to market without a strategy. One of the things that my dad talks about, and I think everybody's heard this, perfect previous planning prevents problems. And I hate it when my dad would say that, but it's so true. Now, with that being said, Mr. Right, the person I used to work at HLC, the male founder of the company, he always said, perfect previous planning promotes peak performance. And boy, did I used to hate that. But he's absolutely right. Both my dad and Mr. H are completely right, right? Because peak performance is going to come if you're planning, if you're setting up the stage. Just like if you want to go ahead and start this health kick, you need to have all the things that are going to take, right? Because if I decide that we're going to be healthy and all I have in my cupboard are snacks and nothing healthy, no salads, then it's going to be very difficult to do that. And it's going to be easier for you to then say, you know what, let's just order a pizza today, right? Who's with me? Got it. Okay. Now, the other piece of it, and this is a lot of the things that entrepreneurs also struggle with, is they're trying to do too much too soon. And for many of us, it's very difficult to be able to then delegate. And at times, as a solopreneur, as someone who is working on their business, and this is our baby, sometimes we think, well, they're not going to get the vision. Or they may not know, right, what I'm trying to do, or they're not going to do it as well. Or the worst case scenario is, oh my God, it's going to be better if I do it because then I don't have to spend money and I can do it all on my own. And really, what you're doing when you're taking on all of the different roles and you're doing it all is that you perhaps left a 9 to 5 job. And now you may not have a 9 to 5 job, but you may have a 24/7. And rather than having a boss, you have now become the employee, right? So, all of these things are the things that I want you to keep in mind when it comes to launching and growing your business and really getting yourself out there. Okay, now let me talk a little bit about um, the things that we need to do when it comes to launching, and that is validating before we build. And when I talked a little bit about HLC, this is a little bit of what we did a lot of, right? We validated, like, is this something that people really needed? People really want? How is that going to work out? I remember we rolled out a program that was test prep or SAT, right? And well, the SAT is the SAT. There's a lot of places that would do prep for the SAT, but what we were going to roll out is something that actually, in addition to the SAT, was prepping kids for the advanced placement exams. But before we did that, we had to validate how many kids are taking the SAT. How many of those kids are going to then go into advanced placement, and where are our places, and do we have the teachers and the infrastructure? And it was so daunting, like, oh my God, all this stuff. But really, before we really rolled out a big program that was going to have a lot of investment when it came to marketing, when it came to rolling it out, creating new, developing new curriculum, bringing in teachers, training them, all of that, right? We needed to make sure that someone wanted it, right? And a lot of times, this is what I see with many entrepreneurs. We have a fabulous idea. And a lot of times we're like so excited to bring that to pass, but we never validate the idea. And this is something that I learned from Pat Flynn. Of course, if you know me, you know I love Pat. And he wrote a book called Will It Fly? Right. And that's one of the most important things that you can do is to really be able to figure out, does someone want this? And if they want it, really find out what is it that they want it for? And how is that going to help you? So, the solutions that we want to take a look at when it comes to validating is really number one, asking people. Sometimes we think, I have a great idea. I know people want it, right? And then we go to town launching it and putting it out there. And yes, people may want it. But the one thing that you will find is that the way that you're interpreting the idea, the way that you're understanding people want things, may not necessarily be the way people want, think, or need. When I launched my book, I had a great name for my book, my first book, Confident You. And it was a fabulous, I don't even remember, it was so fabulous of a name, right? It was like purpose, play. I don't even know if Chelsea, you may even remember all those, the 5P challenge, whatever thing it was. Yeah, she remembers. Okay. So I remember that that was the name of the book. And finally, my coach said to me, you need to validate the idea. I'm like, what do you mean I need to validate the idea? Of course, people want to be more purposeful and they want to play and they want to be peaceful and they want to make a profit, right? All of these things sound really good in theory. So he said, you need to interview people, you need to talk to people, you need to ask them what they want, right? And the next thing you know, I started to hear more. I am overwhelmed. Do they need peace? Absolutely. I need to feel like I'm making a difference. Oh, they have a purpose. Of course. Yeah, I'm right on it. But the one thing that as I started to review everything that people were saying is that they weren't calling it purpose. They weren't calling it peace. They weren't calling it profit. They weren't calling it playtime. They were calling it confidence. They were calling it habits, right? So if I was going to put out a book, right, that's talked about these things, that yes, if you read my book, I talk a lot about that in my book, but I didn't call it that. And the reason is because I wanted to resonate with the people who needed it. And in the same way for you, does your audience actually want this? Does your audience actually need this? And at times that can be interchangeable, but it's very important to also know that. Now, the other little thing that I found at the beginning of my business is I oh yeah, I asked people, okay, well these are the titles, right? When I started to kind of narrow them down. And someone said to me, I'll never forget. And she said, Julie, this is really dumb. And I thought, Jean, what do you mean? She's like, well, I love you, but why would you call this blah, 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 blah? Your brand is confidence. Your website is Go Confidently. Your business is Go Confidently. Your podcast is Casa de Confidence. Why won't you? Because that's what I associate with you. So all of a sudden, I'm like, oh, okay. So that was an important lesson for me. The same way with any type of program that I've launched, right? I validate the idea first. I talk to people, I listen to them, I find out what they're struggling with, and that has allowed me to then craft the next thing, right? And we can definitely do a lot of the validating through many different ways. You can send a quick poll, you can test out the idea, you can do surveys, you can do a beta offer, you can also do curiosity posts, right? And in all of the things that I have launched in the past 5 years, I've done one or all or some version of these things, of these solutions. So I want you to think about what it comes easiest for you when it comes to validating. For me, it is easier for me to talk to people, right? It's always going to be easy to say, "Hey, do you think you need this?" Or what happens? What do you struggle with when it comes to XYZ? For instance, as we were launching the podcasting productions side of the business, I knew that people need help with their podcasts. I knew that can be overwhelming. But I realized that I really needed to figure out what is it that people needed. And as I started to figure out that people wanted to get more downloads, wanted to maybe grow their business through the podcast, or needed to get sponsors, or just wanted to get themselves out there. I knew that there were all these different components. So, what I knew is that if they were putting out a podcast and the podcast wasn't necessarily doing what it's supposed to be doing, they needed to know what they needed to kind of tweak for the podcast. So the offer became not necessarily creating a strategy, which is what I think everybody needs, right? But is really helping individuals assess where their podcast was. So this way, when we started to do the podcasting audits, it helped me, number one, to validate that people wanted help with their podcast, with their podcast strategy. So find a way in which you're going to ask your people, what is it that you want and how do you want it? And then you need to take all that information, and this is where it comes to be a little bit of a challenge. I want you to put it in one sentence, because if you can't explain it in one sentence to a kindergarten, then your offer is too complicated. And all of us are going to try to complicate things. Trust me, I like to complicate things, but really finding a way in which you can understand what people want, right? You validate it. And number two, you write it in one sentence, and your sentence has to have the what, the who, and the why. What are you doing for people? Who are the people and why do they need it? You need to have that all together, because that's going to help you understand the validation of it. Okay. So now that you have that, the next step is you want to create a buzz. You want to create excitement, because if people are going to leverage your offer, it is important for them to hear about your offer, right? Sometimes I've seen a lot of individuals who have a really fun thing that they're launching, and I've seen this time and time again. They don't tell people, or if they do, they don't say it in a very clear way. They say it in a way that it's kind of ambiguous, or they say it in a way that maybe they're like, "Oh, I put it out there a lot." And at the end of the day, nobody really hears about it, right? So start talking about your offer before it's ready. Start telling people, build the excitement. People support what they help to build, right? My book, when I launched it, I talked about that book at nauseum, and I still didn't talk about it enough. And I talked about it all even before it hit print, it went to Amazon, anything. Why? Because I wanted to get a people behind me to help build the momentum. And then, you want to make sure that what you're offering to people is a value. And, for instance, for me, it's important to launch something that people are going to get something out of it, a win, a transformation. Now, in something that is minimal, like a free masterclass like this one, or a mini challenge, or a live Q&A, you're never going to be able to pack all of your knowledge into one thing, right? But what I encourage you to do is to think about, what value can you give someone that you already know who that person is, right? Because we validate it. We also know what that person want, right? The what and why they want it, right? We know all these things. So when you're offering that value and you have that clear in your head, then what you're going to offer is going to not take him from A to Z. It's going to take him from A to B. Okay. that's a really great way for you to continue to build the buzz. Why? Because people are going to come, they walk away with something that they can tangibly implement. It's a win. And then they can say, great, I have these tools. Now I know how to keep going. Or they can say, oh, wait a minute, I like this, but I need more help. And this is when someone decides to then take the next level with you. But what you're really doing is you're creating the space where you're positioning yourself as the solution, but you're also giving the type of solution that gets people to win and feel more confident. When you're also building your buzz, and this is the one thing that a lot of people take for granted, collecting emails, creating landing pages, places where people can go and read about all of this, right? It's important. Why? Because social media is not where we should be posting, just the main place where we do it, share, and create a buzz about anything. Mainly because a social media post has a life expectancy, right? Anytime that you're posting on social media, the people who log in for that day are going to see that post. And out of all the people that follow you, only less than 20% are going to see your stuff because of the algorithm. And even when they see it, it's got is the 4-7-11 rule. People need to see it 7 to 11 times for them to really be able to then say, huh, I got it. Now, Nancy and Amy can tell you that I will typically say to them, if you are sick of talking about something, you are finally going to be talking about it in a way in which someone is going to notice. Most of us have to talk ad nauseum about the thing, whatever it is our offer, because most people are not paying attention to us, right? A lot of times I'll log into Instagram at the end of the night and just kind of do a quick run by and see what's happening, and really main reason is because, we work hard on social media, Chelsea. Chelsea does a lot of the behind to make me look good on social media, right? However, I cannot invest hours on social media because my main priority is to serve clients. My main priority is to do other things that move me forward. And sometimes social media has a lifespan. A lot of people will say, hey, Julie, did you see my thing? I posted about social media. I'm launching my program and it's on social media. And then I'm like, no, I didn't see it. And then I go back and I look, I'm like, oh, where is it? I haven't seen it. Show it to me, right? And that's what a lot of times happens. So if we're thinking that by putting our stuff on social media is it, then we're really missing out in the ability to be able to connect and resonate and also create a group of people that come alongside of us as we're launching and as we're growing. And ultimately, when you are creating a buzz for your offer, you're also creating a list of people who like, know, and trust you, which is what we want, right? You want to build the relationships and let people know, hey, I'm going to give you value, and it's okay if this is all you need, but I'm a resource. And maybe you are not at a point in which you can work with me. Maybe you're not at a point in which you need my help, but you know that this is what I do. And now you can share me with others. And when someone is shared by somebody else, then think about it, that you're cutting down the time in which the trust takes to happen, right? I won't go to a restaurant unless I read the reviews. Why? I want to know what people think, right? If there's a restaurant that sounds great but has no reviews, I most likely won't. And I think that this is the thing that many entrepreneurs take for granted. So now let's talk about the launch timeline. And this is something that a lot of people, again, either take too long to launch because they're thinking, I need to have all my ducks in a row. I need to take that course. I need to make sure that I learn this. I need to be perfect. I have to have the right landing page, all of that, right? But what ends up happening is that you are then stuck in the doing and not the implementing. And that doing is the thing that keeps you from actually moving forward. Um, Launch before you're ready is the most important thing that I'm going to encourage you. And it sounds incredibly scary, especially to the people who like to have all their things outlined with all their checks and balances. But the one thing is, if you're waiting for the stars to align, for you to learn the thing, for the clients to tell you that that's what they want, then you're not going to be able to shift. You're not going to be able to revise. I often tell the story of Bonnie St. John. And if you've heard the story, I'm sorry, I'm going to say it again. But Bonnie St. John is an Olympic medal winner. She raced in the downhill ski in, I don't know, in Switzerland, I forget, in the paraplegic in the Special Olympics. And she had never skied before the age of 19, and she was 21 when she was competing. When she went to the trials and when she went to the first practice runs, she was not expected to place at all, but in the practice runs, she actually came in first, and she came in first before any of the Olympic other players or competitors that had been skiing since they were 4 or 5 years old and live in snow, and Bonnie is from California. So, the next day when the actual competition was starting, everybody's like, "Oh, she did really well. She'll probably win because her time blew everybody else out of the water." Now, the day that she went to ski, it was a terrible day for skiing. The conditions were awful. It was very foggy, cold and bitter, and that kind of cold that makes everything freeze over and you could barely see, no visibility. So Bonnie went, and guess what? She did really good. But toward the bottom of the ski run, she fell. And then she got up, she kept going, fine. Then the other person came along, and not the person who was, supposedly number one, but this other competitor came along and, like Bonnie, was doing great. And then all of a sudden fell, also pretty much in the same spot that Bonnie did. And the next thing, this person got up and continued and completed the run, and that person won. Now, when people ask Bonnie, right, what happened? What happened to you? You had it together. She said, well, simple, very, very simple. She got up before I did. She got up before I did. And I think that that's the one thing that I want to encourage you. When you're launching and you have a timeline, launch before you're ready, but also don't be afraid to fall, because what the fall is going to teach you is number one, to get up. And also, if you get up and the quicker that you plan and you practice getting up, the more that you'll be able to push forward and know what do you need to recalibrate as you're coming back down the hill. Now, in the four phases of launch, we want to tease out, right, the information. I have this great thing coming. You should check it out. Then you want to warm and create the content, create all of the different things that share with people more information about the launch. Excuse me. And then you want to invite. A lot of times I have clients that will say, "Oh my God, I put my offer out there and nobody is buying it." And typically, well, I will say, so how many sales calls did you invite people to? Did you ask someone, "Hey, would you like to work with me? Hey, do you want to get this?" And most of us, again, and I'm included in here, most of us struggle with actually doing the ask. Why? Because we have this preconceived notion that when we ask someone to buy something from us, that we're salesy. We want to stay away from the salesy. My friends, all of us have a need for something. And if we don't get it from the person that maybe wants to give it to us because they never asked, we're going to go and get it from somebody else, right? I called someone to come and do some yard work not too long ago, and they had an advertisement in the Facebook group for the town, and they sounded nice and they had some great reviews. So I called them and I said, "Hey, do you do this kind of work?" And said, "Yeah, absolutely." And I said, "Well, tell me more about it." And they told me everything that they do. I said, "Oh, okay, great. Well, let me know how to work with you." They're like, "Well, just let me know when you want me to come." And I said, "Well, when do you work? Right. And they said, well, I don't know, whatever. And I just felt like, I want to give you my money because I need this thing done. And then all of a sudden, I was in another Facebook group and someone said, hey, who needs this? And I texted and I said, hey, what do you charge for that? Immediately, the person called me, sent me a text, told me, hey, I can come to by tomorrow. Right. So I had a problem. And then that person could fix it right then and there. And although I like the first person, they never said, yes, I can do it. I can come. This is how it happens, right? There was no next steps. So, as you're beginning with this launch timeline, and it's going to be important for you as you're launching, you're going to see all the steps. You're going to say, oh my God, you know what? I should have had a sign up sheet for that. Oh, no, wait a minute. I need a place where people can go and purchase. Or I need one more email between this and that, right? You're going to start to see a lot of these things because you're launching before you're ready. But now what that's going to allow you to do is that you're going to start to be able to plan backwards. Plan it from the backwards. The backward design is an incredibly successful way of planning anything. Just like if you plan a wedding, sometimes, you start to think, well, what I'm going to need? Well, I'm going to need a dress. Yep, that's the first thing you should get. I'm going to need invitations. Okay, well, when should I get the invitations? When should I send them? You start to kind of plan backwards as well, right? You don't start planning for the shower first. You start planning for the end result. And of course, you need to have that client growth engine in place. And this is something that even someone that's been in business for 5 years, I still keep refining my client growth engine. One of the things that is incredibly frustrating, right, for me is I have multiple offers. And yes, I'm at a point in which multiple offers do well and do okay. However, I never did what I am encouraging people and I tell my clients to do. Pick one offer, do it well, create that client growth engine, and then replicate. What I did is like, oh, I'm going to do this and I'm going to sell that and I'm going to have that. And I never created, I might have had some processes, I might have had some systems, I might have had some collateral, right? But every time I had a new something, I had to then recreate the wheel. So find the thing, right? Pick the thing. This is the thing I'm launching. I already validated my idea, right? And then now you're going to go and work backwards, do that backwards design, and then you create your lead magnet, you create the landing page, and you're learning and doing it as you go. And once you do that, you do it again, and then you refine it, and then you do it again, and you refine it. And when that is in a rinse and repeat, right? In which you don't have to reinvent another wheel because that's running kind of an automatic form. Then it's time that you can say, oh, I have another offer. Here's my next offer. And then you can just take everything, all the processes, the collateral, the things from there and apply them to the new offer, right? A lot of times you're going to find out you waste a lot of time in the launching of something, trying to make it perfect or launching multiple things before you refine your back of the house. Um, so, right, the offer statement, right? Not just who the offer is for. We already did that. Now you're going to write what you're offering. And similar to the first time, the first sentence that we wrote, I want you to think about what are you offering? Is it um, uh, do it yourself? Is it a do it with me? Is it a done for you? Write it as specifically as possible. Who needs this, right? Well, I'm going to offer this to women who are just starting out, or I'm going to do this to people who have been in business for a long time. It's going to save you a lot of time to also be very clear with who this offer is for. And why do people know it? Now, your post, your emails, all of that should be teasing it out, putting the information out there. And then you either can create a simple wait list, right? Because sometimes it's better to build or to launch before it's built. A lot of times people are launching a community or launching a group course, and they're like, well, I have to have all the modules done. No, validate the idea and create the first module and sell it. When people buy it, then guess what? Then you can go in and, okay, next module, let's do it together. And then you start to put that together and you'll see that your simple course, your simple offer is starting to take shape and you're creating things as you're going along, which I know that it sounds terrifying to some people, but you are not going to lose momentum. You're going to seize the opportunity because, like I mentioned in the idea in my story in the beginning with HLC, a lot of times we miss the boat because we were busy creating all the things as opposed to actually servicing people. And of course, the graphics, the call to action, set the time when you're opening your cart, all of that needs to be set, but you can begin to create it as you're going along. Now, the content that you create when you're promoting your offer has to be the type of content that creates awareness, also engages people, right? You begin the conversation. And beginning the conversation means you put up, maybe you do a workshop like this and people become aware of you. Or you go in social somebody's podcast and people are like, oh, okay, now I know this person, right? Or someone, again, it could be a YouTube or it could be a social media post, right? Whatever it is, you're building awareness. But from that awareness, you're driving people to your thing. And your thing to engage is adding them to your email list. Because in social media, we don't own people. So if people are your followers, your likers, your friends, if social media goes away, then all of a sudden, right, you have no way of communicating with these people and growing in your relationship with them and continuing to build a deeper connection because engagement, once people become aware, you engage, right? And after the engagement, then you begin to nurture, you begin to build trust, you begin to share the value, you begin to be the person that people say, oh, yeah, you know what? That's cool. She helped me with that thing she wrote in the newsletter, or she gave me that great resource. I love that. Right. Many of us kind of go from awareness to selling. I see a lot in social media that someone I follow them and I like their stuff and I follow them and then they'll send me a message. It's like, oh, hey, thanks for the follow. And I'm like, oh, great. And then they'll say, oh, what made you follow me? And I'll say, I like your stuff. And the next thing you know, they'll send me a message. Oh, well, you're the perfect person for you to join my mastermind for $15,000. Disheartening. Why? Because I don't know this person from Adam. I've never heard the story. I saw maybe one reel that I thought was funny, right? So it's important for us to really start to create that wraparound relationship. And that comes with different level of content, different level of introduction, of relationship building. And of course, you have to be comfortable with telling people what to do. Buy here, do this, come to that. I want you to join my, all of these things. If you don't invite them, somebody else will. So be okay. Teach, tease it out, repeat it, but also make sure that you're building the relationships that are meaningful because that's why we love working with people when we find the people that are our people. And that only happens when we build relationships. Okay. So, how do you craft an irresistible offer? You want to go ahead and have a promise, you want to have a process, and you want to have a price, right? The promise is when you come to this, you will have this, and it's going to cost this. A lot of times we don't want to put the price out because we're like, well, people may not like it. They may think it's too expensive or they'll never, buy it. No, the more that we say upfront, well, this is what it's going to cost, right? Then people will self-select themselves and will say, you know what? I would love to work with Julie, but I'm not at that point yet. But guess what? Because I'm nurturing relationships, I still have enough free content and things that people can take advantage of that can get them a result, right? And I become, mm, unafraid, right, of saying people won't buy from me because I'm too expensive. Also, guess what? You also should, if I mean, you may not be expensive enough for somebody else. And then that person, right? Maybe you're somewhere in the middle, and that person is going to say, oh my God, this person is cheap. What am I going to get for that? Right. So allow people to know the price so they can self select. And of course, the process, when you sign up, what's next, right? When you get my first email, what's next? When you get that second email, what's next? When people come to work with us for podcasting, for instance, right? The first thing that we do is we do an intake call in which we find out what they want. Do they have a show? While they're launching one, what's next? And then we get a good sense. And the first thing that they're going to get is welcome to working with Casa de Confidence Productions. Sign your agreement here. Number 2, join my Slack channel. Number 3, here's your first checklist of all the things that we're going to be doing in the next 6 weeks, right? Why? Because then this way someone knows. Like today I had a strategy call with a new client, right? We have 3 new clients that started just at the same time. And it would be very challenging to like, oh, who's doing what? When are we supposed to do that? But because we have a checklist for them and a checklist for us that is just basic, I can see at all times where the client is in the process of working with us. And that's what makes an offer irresistible when someone knows. How many of you like to just step into the unknown, right? How many of you are curious about buying something, but then think, well, I don't know, how is that going to work? Right. So, transparency is key to having an irresistible offer. And of course, your messaging has to be really simple. I go back because I could be really complicated when I write messages, right? But what I go back to do is I always think, can my 12-year-old niece, and by the way, she used to be 5 at one point. That was always my measure. Can Amelia understand this? Will Amelia get this, right? If Amelia gets it, then it's easy for someone else to understand. But a lot of times we want to make it fancy and we want to say, well, I'm going to give you the transformation that lets your soul soar. Okay, well, my soul soaring, it's going to be very different from Chelsea's, from Nancy's, from Amy's. So we need to make sure that when you work with me, you're going to see that it's going to help you be able to find the places where you can become visible so that the people that need you will want to work with you or will start to view you as the authority that they want to learn from, right? So make sure that that is very clear. And again, how many times will they meet with you? How often? What else will they get in the offer? Will there be a way for them to maybe get their money back? Or will it be a chance for them to, if they miss a session, come back for another session, right? All of these things make the buying process for somebody else easy. It's a no-brainer when they understand. So have all of these components in there. And I have a checklist that if you want all of the things that should be included in the irresistible offer, let me know and I can share that. Now, the next thing, again, when it comes to this whole launching, whether it be a podcast, an offer, whether it be a partnership, keep it simple, keep it moving, right? The perfection is really the thing that keeps most of us from moving forward. I have a client that launched her business and she decided that, well, I know I can work and I know I'm going to be a great coach. But before I can talk to people who could be my clients, I think I need to become a better coach. And they went in front of the coaching certification. And then another, and then another. Fast forward 2 years in, um, they still don't have any clients. But every time I see them, and we work together from time to time, but not all the time. Really? Why? Because my offer was helping them launch, and I was very clear. If you want to continue to get certifications, you're not working on your business. So the clarity was, I'm not a good fit for you. But every time I see they're taking a new course, they're launching a new thing, but they're not getting clients. So again, keep it moving. Don't get stuck. And again, launching is about testing, it's about improving, it's about um, making a cake, right? Our launch, our offers are a beautiful cake. The first time we make a cake, it may not turn out like the picture. The second time might be better. Maybe you will use sugar rather than salt, right? And then the third time, maybe you'll even decorate it. Or the fourth time, you're going to decorate it, but you're going to make sure that it's cool before you put the frosting on, right? Every iteration is going to help you make it better and better and better. And remind yourself that better is done is better than perfect, right? Done is better than perfect because a lot of times when we get stuck in the perfection, then it creates a lot of overwhelm for us and for the people that we're delivering for. So, if you are looking to launch anything, or if you want to figure out like what would be the steps that I need to do for myself, for the thing, I'm always here. We can talk about it. I love to kind of think big picture and then narrow it down into what are the steps. Nancy can tell you that's one of my favorite things to do is take the big, okay, how do I get that? And breaking it down into the tangible things that will make a difference in the launching. And don't be afraid of the failure because it's not a failure, it's a practice, it's an iteration. And that iteration will help you arrive to where you want to be. So, without further ado, thank you, ladies, for coming and for the ones who are tuning in. I so appreciate that you're spending some time, and I'm going to open it up for questions.
I feel like I need to take a lot of that in still.
It's a lot. I went through a lot in less than an hour, and this is really something that typically, like with new clients, it takes us about 6 weeks to actually go through when I'm working one to one. And Nancy can even tell you, right? Like we may go through the whole process, but then we go back and kind of like, okay, where do we need to tweak? So it's certainly something that it's doesn't get better until you actually take the leap.
I have a question for you, Julie.
Hmm.
So say that you are trying to launch a new business
Hmm.
and or a new product offer, but you have a limited uh, targeted demographic or a limited audience already, a small email list, small social
Hmm.
media following. How do you go about building that when you're
Yeah.
starting from scratch with the product you don't have yet or don't have ready?
Amazing. That's such a good question. So, one of the first things that I typically tell people is you want to make sure that you be seen, be known, be understood. So, if you have 10 people in your email list, then you tell those 10 people, hey, this is who I am, this is what I'm doing, and this is what I would love to keep doing. And you can then say, who do you know, right? Hey, Chelsea, I'm launching a new thing. Do you have some time to chat? I want to tell you all about it. And then you talk to Chelsea about it and I tell you, and you're like, oh, you know what? That's a good idea. I know someone who, right? Or, wow, that's great. I'll keep it in mind. The more that we create, and this is what keeps us stuck, right? In the creation process, we think we're working, but we're really hiding. And the more that we talk to people, the more that we can grow. My list didn't grow necessarily because I was dancing on all the platforms. It grew because I had more conversations with people because I really figured out like, okay, I don't know anybody who needs help with our podcast, but I'm going to tell people that that's what we do, right? I may not know that people want to talk, get onto the TEDx stage, but I'm going to tell them, hey, if you know someone that wants to know what I did, I'll be happy to talk to them about it, right? So that would be my first thought. And if it's a very limited population, just because they're not in your email list doesn't mean that someone that is falls within that doesn't know someone in your email list. So always ask, who do you know that, right? Who do you know that's launching a business or who do you know that needs this or who do you know question is great. And the follow up to that question is thanks for meeting with me today. I love talking to you. When can we talk again? Or who do you know that you can introduce me to? And that helps to expand your network. But there's some nuances, obviously, depending on what the thing is, too. So we can talk about it if you want.
Hmm. I love the idea of anyone that you talk to, just say, can you think of anyone else that I might be able to work with?
Mhm.
Anyone that you think would want to have a conversation with me, just like reach out and just like
Yeah.
instantly like web that out. That's such a smart
Yeah.
idea.
The other piece of it, and I would be remiss if I didn't say that. When I ask people, "Who do you know?" 9 times out of 10, the question is also, I'd love to be able to meet other people, not because and I come at the conversation from giving first and then asking later. Like, "Hey, I'm 9" I'll give you an example. Yesterday, I met with this woman. She is a voice coach, right? And I met her at a networking event and I thought she was pretty cool. We got to talking and I said, "Hey, who is the person that typically takes a voice lesson from you? Because I don't know a lot of singers, but I'd love to be able to support you." And she went on and she said, "Well, I also help people who are afraid of speaking out loud, and I help them kind of moderate and do the right breathing so they don't get too nervous and lose their breath." And I said, "Oh, great. You know what? I actually have a couple people that want to become speakers, and they would be great to speak to you." And from that, she said, "Well, tell me a little bit more about what you do." And I said, "I'm hosting a retreat. This is my big thing coming up in November." And she's like, "Oh, I'll keep you in mind." Today, logged in, and I didn't even finish reading the emails. She introduced me to 3 different people that are interested in the retreat, right? So it's about who do you know, but also what can I do for you, right? Because people will then start to think of, "Oh, Julie helped me with that. Who do I know that can help Julie?" Right? And that's the
Mhm.
reciprocal relationships that help our business grow and helps to create trust, right? Because the people that she introduced me to, if they just saw my thing on social media, scroll, right? But because this person who they have a relationship, who they trust, is saying, "Hey,
I met with
talk to
this
this
person.
person,"
Yeah.
right? So then it kind of up levels your trust with them.
I wrote a note. I'm going to do that tomorrow. Thanks, Julie.
You're welcome anytime. Oh, and in that vein too, Chelsea, if we don't have a big email list, the other thing that you can do, and you're already doing that by being a part of the Passionistas, leverage other people's audience. Like, "Hey, I don't have a big list, but do you mind putting something in your newsletter about me? Or do you mind sharing with in your podcast that I'm doing that?" Right? I have so this is a friend, coach friend of mine, and she doesn't have a big audience. She sent me her book, and I love it, right? Hey, holy shit, I did that. It's her name of the journal, right? Well, guess what? I love this, and I'm going to talk about it. And she sent it to me because guess what? She wanted me to talk about it because she knows that I'm always talking about building an evidence list, talking about, writing down the stuff that you win so that you can go back and build your confidence. So that's the other way in which you can grow and launch something is by leveraging other people's audiences. You guys are so good. Thank you.
Mhm.
So Nancy, it's up to you now if we don't have any other questions.
If we don't have any other questions, I think we're done. Thank you, Julie. It was amazing.
Thank you, Julie.
Thank you,
You're
Julie.
welcome.
Good job.
Thank you. Thank you.